What if you were able to transform your real estate business and work primarily off inbound referrals? Speaking of which, today's episode is sponsored by Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have a client who's thinking about making a move to that area, they are the referral partners to call. Today, I sit down with Patrick Brown, who shares his strategies to closing over 104 inbound referral leads from the date of 2021 to current. Now, speaking of that, if you're curious to learn more about the Inner Circle group, where we not only trade ideas how to improve the business, but also referrals, scroll down to the description below and follow the link. And as always, I'm your host and referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Patrick, dude, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm really excited to unpack. So I did some research on you, and from 2021 to current, you've closed, and I want everybody to just stall and listen to this. You've closed 105 referrals, that's bonkers, man. That's kudos to you. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge portion of my business, if not the bulk of my business, and it was really out of necessity. Moving to Arizona from Los Angeles, I had to figure out where was I going to start. How was I going to kind of get things going? And there were some circumstances, that we could kind of talk about that helped that and led up to it. But thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of that.
Before we unpack your strategies, because I know you have very specific strategies to attract referrals to you, which I think is amazing. If you could, in just a sentence or two, just share who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, as you see, Patrick Brown, I'm a dual licensed in Arizona and California agent with Compass. I moved here in 2020. My father had actually been here since the 80s. So Arizona is my primary place of residence and where most of my business is. I do still work with previous clients in Los Angeles. I'm married, father of two boys, love golf and the lifestyle that Arizona brings here, and travel with the family. And I guess that's kind of my nutshell.
Nice. Appreciate that. And so I want to start unpacking a little bit those 105 closed, because I'm sure you had more referrals than that. That's the portion that closed, which again, that's even if you had good, not phenomenal close rates, that's still like phenomenal. 105 is a phenomenal number, which is fantastic. But did you find that it ramped up year over year, or it was consistent? What's the pattern behind each year?
I mean, it definitely ramped up from when I initially started, kind of diving into it in early 2021 to now. I could see where I'm getting bigger numbers of referrals, but it's not significantly larger because there's really, at the end of the day, only so much that you can handle on your plate.
100%.
Yeah. So, I get the referrals that are out there. When I'm too busy to handle it, there's other people in our market, and we all discuss and such, and other people are taking one. But it is an area that I want to continue to actually expand by expanding my team, get a little bit more of a presence and such, and be more of that referral source going forward, still in Arizona.
On a total side note, a person to talk to about that strategy is Francie Molina. She's amazing. I'm happy to make the introduction. If you don't know her, it sounds like you already do.
Know the name.
She's super giving. Like, she'll hop on a phone, and very, very much the same philosophy of going out and tracking these referrals, but then building the team so she can build them as individuals. Awesome agent. So I'd love to make that intro for you.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a little head poking down here.
No worries. You're talking, so the pup's like, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Within those referrals, did you find a pattern of where they're coming? Were they coming from any specific pocket feeder market for you, or were they kind of peppered throughout the U.S.? What was the underlying pattern there? Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below.
Yeah, it was really interesting because one, I did kind of understand where Arizona's feeder markets were slightly over time. And being a kid growing up, coming out to visit my dad, I remember watching the Cubs on WGN. They were like the only baseball team you could watch in the 80s and 90s here. So there was always kind of a line between Chicago and Arizona. But once I got into the referral market a little bit more and started to understand things, I've really seen where our feeders come from. Obviously, California, and that's just, I think, kind of a commerce aspect, people coming and going between. But we
Sure.
get a lot of people coming from the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland area, who either have second homes down here or moved down here. We get a lot of people from Colorado, kind of the same situation, either second homes or they're getting out of the cold and then coming to Arizona. Chicago is our primary market where most people come from. I think Chicagoans have the option of either, hey, when we retire or when we want warm, do we go to Florida or do we go to the Southwest, Arizona or Texas or California? So we get a lot of people that way. Kansas City has been a really huge pipeline of late. And,
Wow.
I noticed it actually even more so in the last couple of weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, seeing Kansas City jerseys and hats everywhere. And I'm seeing more and more Kansas Cityans. Is that the proper term?
We'll get schooled online. Somebody will comment on it and be like, no, the correct term is this.
Yeah. And, I talk largely about kind of second home aspect. I'm involved with the Compass Resort here, one of the co-founders of that, which is a second home salespeople, people who do a lot of second home market or investment like Airbnb type home. So that's part of our draw here as well. But then we also have a significant number of people who've moved here for work. The Silicon Desert. Everybody's Silicon something or other. So we're the Silicon Desert. And so that's where we're pulling from now, the Bay Areas. And we pull a little bit more from around the rest of the country to answer your question. So.
That's fascinating. My stepsister years ago, probably like a half a decade at this point, her and her husband and kids, they moved from Connecticut to Arizona. And so to your point, it was a financial move and weather move. It was just a better on both categories. And so it makes sense. It makes sense that you're a feeder market and I'm not familiar with it. So I'm originally from Connecticut, and typically in the winters, people would move or migrate to Florida. And then as they retire, they move to Florida for the lower tax bases. It sounds like Arizona is that to California. Is that a true statement? Hey, real estate pros, be honest. You should be using video, but maybe you feel awkward, don't have the time, or just aren't seeing the results. This is where Kim Rittberg's Video Bootcamp comes in. This live coaching program helps agents create high quality videos quickly and confidently, resulting in leads and clients. Her students have seen results. One landed 3 new clients directly from social media, and others brought in millions of dollars in closed sales. Spots are limited, and to apply now, follow the link in the description below.
Yeah, very, very much so. There is a political element that's a little different between California and Arizona that has affected and changed.
There's that.
Yep.
There's that.
It's changed a little bit of that migration pattern, whereas some people might leave California and maybe New Mexico instead, or they head to Texas because Arizona's not one way or another for them. I actually my growing up home where I grew up, Columbia, Maryland, on the East Coast, kind of same thing. Understood, a lot of people head to the South. A lot of people on the East Coast get very tired of that humidity too. So that brought a lot of people to the West, and that's when I talk with people.
Good point.
That element ties in as well as to why people might choose Arizona. Arizona was extremely affordable for a very long time, and a lot of our affordability has washed away with the rush in 2021, 2022. And people now come in there a little more surprised to find where prices are at. And it's not what they were necessarily expecting. So we've slowed a little bit on some of the migration into Arizona over the last year or so.
So are you seeing at this point, it's kind of the migration has slowed? Have you started to see with the call? I know the big companies like Google, Facebook, they're starting to call people back into the office. Are you starting to see a migration? My dog's got a squeaking toy, and so you now hear that in the background, which is amazing. So I apologize to the listeners, but are you seeing a migration back to the other markets, or not yet, or not at all?
Not yet. We are, seeing a couple people. Like I did have one client call me who wanted to sell because they did get called back to their job and they wanted to go back to their job. But one of the benefits that we have here in Arizona is a significant number of tech companies that have come in. We have a lot of like the electric vehicle companies, Lucid and such to the south, Meta and Apple. They've all built data centers out in East Mesa. There's continued growth. There's a lot of entrepreneurship. So people are saying, well, do I need to go back to this company, or what about what I've got right here in Scottsdale or in Tempe or in the surrounding areas, Gilbert, Chandler? So there's a lot more that people explore, and so they don't necessarily say, I'm going to go back to the company that I was with. And so I don't think it's going to push a lot of people out of our market. I hope not. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start having anchor points like Lucid, people then come and stay. And then the basically what happened with Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area is they not only come and stay, but when they break off and start their own business, they want to work with people they already know. So they hire the people from those symbiotic companies. And that's how these areas, that's basically how Silicon Valley kept growing and eventually blew up to what it is, because these people would break off and start their own thing. And the area got bigger and bigger and bigger.
And it's really interesting when you look at Silicon Valley and how your area, give it, say, we'll call it 40 years time, roughly back. We'll go back into the early 80s, and how much disruption came from Silicon Valley and what it changed and meant to the Bay Area, and how much influx of capital and all those elements, and then how it affects real estate. Yeah. And so here in Arizona, we're starting to see the early stages of that. We're seeing a significant number of the companies coming in. It brings the workers in. It's elevating the prices. It's elevating the builds. But see, unlike the Bay Area, we've got the land to expand, and we just keep expanding. New towns basically popping up overnight with builders and such. And the West Valley, which used to kind of be, once you passed Phoenix, you were driving past dusty little towns, are now huge enclaves where builders are building thousands of homes. So that's being pushed by chip manufacturers, TSMC up to the north. They've built entire communities because of all of the workers that were coming over for that. So we are where Silicon Valley was, maybe 20, 25 years ago, and it's just going to continue to grow, we hope.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And it's interesting because the Bay Area is basically from San Francisco down to about San Mateo is a peninsula. And so you're hitting water on either side. And so there's nowhere to go. And so it's people pushed further and further south or east to really expand out, and then supply and demand, because you now have limited land, limited space. Prices skyrocket for those who can afford to stay there. And that's really part of what San Francisco is 7 by 7 miles, which is, I've joked about it on the past episodes, but its footprint is smaller than Disney's parking lot, which is bonkers.
Whoa.
And so, and in a very, on the timeline of real estate in a very short period, our prices just blew up. But to kind of,
if I can, that's where people, they'll call and they're like, hey, I'm interested in Scottsdale. And we're saying, okay, well, where in Scottsdale? And they're like, well, Scottsdale. It's like, oh, no. Scottsdale is 168 square miles. It's 47 miles north to south.
It's huge.
There are, stretches in different areas. And so when people have a concept of it, Phoenix is very similar too. We have these very kind of linear cities that run north and south. The sheer scale of what we have it seems large, but the funny thing is Arizona did such a wonderful job in the Valley of planning for it. We've got a wonderful freeway system. I came from Los Angeles. You could spend an hour and a half to go 12 miles on the freeway. You see it all the time. Out here, if your drive is 25 miles, it's taking you 25 minutes to get there. So it's really quite nice. And that's another thing that brings people here is quality of life. They're getting time back in their vehicles and such. So, but we do have to sometimes kind of hone it in. Okay, where in Scottsdale are we looking? So.
Well, and that's where your market expertise of like, I actually live here, and if you're looking for these things, these are the pockets you want to be in, and that's really where the market expertise comes in. But let's kind of segue back into more specifics of referrals. Within, it sounds like the referrals that you're getting, they're not clients referring other clients. It sounds like they're more real estate agents and colleagues referring business to you directly. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's the primary aspect as to where I started the referral business. Because we've kind of now done a number of transactions around, we are starting to see some referral business coming from our clients that we've put in places. But the bulk of what I do is agent to agent referral, and largely within the Compass network.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this, and it's kind of a flippant question, but to build these relationships with these agents, are you just sending them your just listed properties?
So
I asked because, oh my gosh, we get so many of those, and I just delete those people. Like, that's not a relationship.
So I'm gonna tell you a little bit of my kind of philosophy on things.
Yeah.
I don't like traditional realtors. Don't send me emails. I don't send out any emails. I don't have a website that I populate and push everything out to. I don't do a lot of update stuff or come visit me at my open house. I'm terrible on social media. I like to put stuff out there, but it's like from a time perspective, I don't necessarily. Yeah. I've stepped back and looked at real estate, and my success in real estate comes to you and me as two realtors having a solid connection and understanding each other, and you going, I like what you're doing in Arizona. I got a client moving there. Here you go. And in turn, I establish a relationship and a partnership with that person living here, that they know they've got a realtor that they can lean on when they have any real estate questions, or if they need to leave, or if they've got somebody else moving in. So you build those little micro markets, and then you keep up with people. You give them a call every once in a while. You talk to your referral partners. You say, hey, how's it going? Or build, little referral groups. That's it. That's all I do. And that's all I have the time for. So I'm the worst about sending out my just listed and the other things. It probably could be something that I could hire somebody to help me with. I do my own paperwork. I'm down on my own TC. When people call me with referrals, I'm soup to nuts because like I'm working with 3 different first-time buyers right now. I love working with them. They get confused or put off if, 1, they're being shown the property by somebody different. 2, if, hey, please sign this comes from some other random person and they're not fully understanding. Even if you explain the process to them, there's still a little hesitancy in it. I remember when I first bought my house and I just didn't understand anything going on. So I really dial down and say, okay, here's everything going on. I'm sending you this. This is explaining it. And I walk people through that process. And I do that, almost to a fault. I'm working, all the time to do it all. But I think it's been that commitment into the work that I do that's helped other agents say, you got to call Pat if you're talking for somebody in Arizona. He'll take care of your people. He'll really dial it in for you. So.
Yeah. I love that you said that because it's not about the emails and spamming people. It's about what you said. It's you and I having a conversation. And before we recorded, we talked about our dogs. We talked about our family. We talked about moving and you get these human connections where I understand you. I understand how you think and I understand how you approach your business. So when I have that client who does need that hand holding and they don't understand the different neighborhoods, I know you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, we have kids and we really want to be close to dog parks and I'm like, oh my God, talk to Pat. He's got a family. He knows the schools. He knows the neighborhoods and he's got a dog. He can riff with you on that level too. And so I completely agree. It's that personal that personal connection. You and I we're going to spend an hour together today, and we've already had conversations before in the past. Now, if I have anybody at all thinking about Arizona, I'm going to call you and say, hey, I know Flagstaff's not your area, but who do you recommend? Or because now I trust you, we have this rapport. And so I really just encourage people, whoever's listening to this, to go back and listen to this part and listen to what you're saying about it, because structurally that is the most important part of our business. And I think it's going to insulate us in the future in light of all the commission stuff that recently has changed.
Absolutely. And, definitely hitting on that relationship aspect. I can think back to when I started in real estate 10 years ago and was sitting in an office in John Arrow Group in Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. And there were 4 or 5 other agents. It almost feels like a boiler room kind of thing. Like everybody's kind of starting. They just got their licenses. 2015 was a big run up. A lot of people doing it. And there were people who were so focused on putting out, I got to get the best looking logo, or I've got to get the best looking social media or something to this effect. And they spent time doing it. And to be honest, they're not in the business anymore. They focused on the wrong things. You focus on your sphere. You focus on a handful of agents who you have connections with, especially in other markets. And even though I cover a wide area here, and I can detail a little more about that, I'm also not everything to everyone. There's going to be other agents who are better suited for things. Tucson, Sedona, other areas outside, west side of town. I'm too busy. There's so many other things. So I even have relationships with agents here in town that I'm going to say, this person's better suited for helping your client at this time. Or, hey, I'm super busy. Is it okay if we connect you with this person? Yeah. Stepping back also a bit from the ego and saying, okay, listen, I don't need another paycheck. What I need to also do is continue our network. And if you're really looking at our brand, Compass as a whole, and the power within our brand, the ability to do that and say, listen, I've got another great Compass agent that I know, trust me, that's the person that's great for you. We're furthering our brand to really just become that dominant face in the valley or in the individual market. So it's all at play every time when we're talking to each other and trying to figure out what's the best way to make it happen.
Yeah, man. I sorry, my dog literally just barked as I started talking, so we'll have to edit that piece out. When I started in the business, I started in 2016, and it was that same rush. Everybody was scrambling to get in the business and make deals happen. And I switched brokerages, and then I had my first transaction in San Francisco, which was for 2.6 million, followed by a 1.8. And then this newer agent called me over to her desk, and she was like, hey, what do you think of my website? And I remember thinking at that point, I was like, you're spending your time on the wrong thing. I said, I don't have a website. I don't have a logo. I don't have any brand presence. I have no social media, and I just closed 2 deals. Those aren't those key metrics that you actually need. And then shortly or around that same period, I went to a meeting, and the sales manager said, write down a list of the 10 qualities your ideal client has. And I was like, oh, that's really important. And then here was the most important part of that. She said, write a list of 10 more things of the clients you will not work with. And once I realized, to your point, that's not my service area. Those aren't my clients. And I removed my ego out of it. And then now it becomes about service of, hey, you want to move or you want to buy in this area? I'm not your agent. That's not my strong suit. Let me introduce you to the person who is going to best help you meet your needs. And then those relationships build. And now I get referrals from those agents in those markets. And that really, those little key things in the beginning, or reminding yourself now and going back and making sure you're doing, I think they're just so crucially important to our business.
I agree. And I know from my background, and I didn't mention it before, but you and I talked about it, but for people listening to the podcast, I was an actor for 15 years. And so I had jumped into being an actor after leaving a sales job and other things. But as an actor, you're learning your trade, you're getting the skills to go do things. And it's a number of years in some cases before you're ever getting an opportunity. But once you start getting opportunities, what's happening is you're meeting casting directors, you're meeting directors and producers, you're meeting people who are going to say, you know what, I trust that person, I want to give you the business. It's the exact same concept. relationship is the core of any business. And so once I figured that out in acting and started understanding how to have the relationships with the casting directors and the producers or directors, and communicating with them, having an open relationship so that they can see who you are, they understood, and they'd say, you're right for this role. I can't tell you how many times I walked into a room that I thought I should get the role. The casting director who knew me and kind of had known from that knew I wasn't right for that role, but maybe I was right for a different one. It's the same concept. It goes into from a referral standpoint when you're talking with the realtor or you're talking with the client. And it's like, hey, as I'm talking to you, I'm now realizing I'm not the right fit for you. But this person's going to be a little bit better of a fit for you. The challenge in real estate is everybody wants to be everybody to everything. And it seems like, okay, I can do it. And we take it all on. It takes a little bit of time for us to get down the road in our businesses where we can step back and say, I don't have to be everything to everybody. And I can kind of let go of some of those things because I built enough of a business here that I can lean on. So it changes in whatever market you go into.
Yeah. It's similarly, I've always likened it to puzzle pieces.
Yep.
It's like, if the puzzle piece doesn't fit, right? You go to a casting call, you do a listing presentation, and it doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. Like, you don't dwell on it. Don't cry about it. Just go find the piece that fits. Like, it's really hard. Like, don't get me wrong. It's really hard to separate your ego and not feel like it's a loss. But the reality is it just wasn't a fit. And there's a better fit out there where it's gonna, like, it lines up perfect. It just sinks right in. The picture matches, and you're like, man, this is it. Like, I'm so glad I didn't waste my opportunity cost on this other thing and tried to force it, because it would have been a nightmare.
Absolutely. And sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. That's why I like to use the acting side of things to kind of tie it through, is because you've seen those TV shows or those movies or things where, like, God, that's so perfectly cast. And, they went through 200 people to get that one person in that role. Yeah. Now, does real estate, do people want to interview 200 realtors to get that point? No, but there is a necessity for it to be that right thing. And sometimes we're in transactions where it's just beautiful. We're making music. It is a perfect fit. Your puzzle piece, kind of, you go right in it. There's other times when it's square peg, round hole, and it's you're fighting your way through it, and it's a challenge. That's where realtors, people who've kind of really earned their stripes, they get it done because they understand and they can lean on the business. Otherwise, that's the difference between being 10 years in the business and being 1 year in the business. And
sure.
You can fall back on it so you can get through the square peg round hole. It's the same thing with an actor who's got 25 years experience. They can go step on the set of some horrible script movie or something and kind of get it done. They can bring it to life and then move on to the next. Collect their paycheck and move on to the next. So there's a lot of similarities, between those. I even loved, with acting, I'd go on an audition and you don't get the part, you never hear anything, you don't know why. So it's like you can go on a listing presentation, or I can talk to a referral or something, and you don't get the part and you don't know why. I developed a very thick skin and the ability to just go, okay, fine, next. And you move on to the next, you move on to the next. And then the process of real estate, when you get going, you get an accepted offer, you're in escrow, and then you're done. It's the same concept when you book a TV show or something. You book the job, it's the accepted contract. You go, you perform, you do your thing. That's our inspections, that's the escrow period. And then at the end, it's kind of like, hey, thank you all so much. It was great working with you. And you may not ever work with those people again, the other listing agent or other buyer's agent.
True.
And so there's a lot of that I was able to bring into this business that helped me kind of just approach the business with that mentality. So,
same page.
I want to point out, by the way, it's not something that we intended to do, but that we both have skulls over our shoulder was just kind of a funny connection, right?
What's really funny is I worked with different people on this podcast, and I've had people that are like, hey, we really need to change your background, and could we get rid of the skull? And I'm like, no. Hard no. It's not. It's a non-debatable. Mine is it's a little morbid, but it's actually a plaster skull with gold leaf. But it reminds me, it's very Tibetan in my mind, but it reminds me this is a finite experience that we're having, and this too shall pass. And take the experience for what it is, but also enjoy your time while you're here. And so it's kind of my reminder, my daily reminder when I see it.
I love that. That's deep. Mine is a lot more superficial. It matched the tequila bottles. That's yeah.
Hey, you know what? A good drink of alcohol sometimes just that helps at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true as well, man.
So let's go back to leveraging your referrals in your network. So it sounds like you have a lot of amazing network, like connections within these communities, of more specifically of realtors. And within that, are you in any online forums? Where are you finding? Are they? It's a convoluted question. I apologize, but are they coming directly from the agents you have relationships with, or are they in an office and they're like, their colleague happens to say, "Oh, I have somebody moving to the Scottsdale area. Do you know anybody?" And then they make the connection, or are you on online forums and having, like, keeping an eye on that? Where specifically, if we can get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts, are those?
The quick answer is yes, all of us. you know, kind of working a couple different aspects of things. But going back to when I first moved into Arizona, Compass wasn't here, didn't have much of a presence, and I was still licensed in California, and I still had access to the Compass platform on my phone. I started to understand and lean into what Workplace was and how people were communicating on there. Going back a couple years prior, Compass had acquired the brokerage I was with in California. And the team I worked on didn't have as much of a need for the Compass tools, and they didn't understand what was there. So we didn't use a lot of the Compass platform at the time. It wasn't until I got over here and, one, didn't have the platform at my disposal to do my day-to-day business other than, kind of Workplace on the phone. And two, starting to say, okay, well, where's the business going to come from? That's when I started to see that there was a huge network of thousands of realtors out there at Compass who were saying, hey, we need somebody in Arizona. And so I started reaching out, talking to people, responding to posts, various aspects to try to get into get in front of people, see people. I went to the retreat in Austin, and I love marketing. I love kind of coming up with clever ideas to catch people's attention. And so I had made business cards that were the state of Arizona. And so it was just simply looked like the flag. It was very noticeable. And on the back of it, I had a QR code. It said, Compass is not yet in Arizona, but I am. And people could scan it and go right to my card.
Brilliant.
And so I went around at that meeting, and I was putting those on chairs. I was putting them at breakouts when people come out to grab their food, and they'd see that. I had it taped to my name tag. So I was like, hey, listen, I'm in Arizona. Hello, hello, hello. It's reaching out at that time and saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And so once you start to do that, and then you start to respond to the referrals, then opportunities open up that become, okay, here's an online forum, here's a group, here's what do they call them now? Affinity groups and such that makes sense. I looked at Arizona and I said, what's interesting is we don't have a presence with the sports and entertainment division here. And at the time, a good friend of mine who's a director of NFL Films was working with the Cardinals. And he goes, hey, we've got to get you in here. So I reached out to the division and I said, you guys don't have a presence. I'd love to be the person who can help you. I have a background in entertainment. I went through the interview process, met the qualifications and came through and said, okay, hey, now we've got a sports entertainment process. So then I'm reaching out to 170 of some of the top agents in the country working with athletes saying, I can help you, with your client who just got traded here. And in the time period, in the last 2.5, 3 years of being in the sports entertainment division and such, I have managed to break into the Arizona Cardinals, and I've done transactions with 16 players. And that's been a big portion. I've gotten referrals of baseball players. I'm working to continue that aspect. So that's also a personal passion. I love the sports side of things. My father was a season ticket holder with the Cardinals, and before he passed, he was so proud of the fact that I'm working with players, and he thought that was so cool. So now, part of my drive and motivation is continuing to, in his honor, do the best I can for the players of the Cardinals. It's always kind of fun talking to these guys and saying, hey, I've been a fan since the Cardinals moved here. I was a kid. And Now I'm getting the help. I love that aspect. So to go back to your original question, the groups that I'm now a part of, like Compass Resort, the Sports Entertainment Division, Compass Connection, various ones, have come out of just kind of meeting people, finding a niche that makes sense. I do a lot of second home sales here, so Compass Resort makes sense. I work with athletes now. Compass Sports Entertainment makes sense. So finding those areas to continue to explore and build, and that's where a lot of referrals do come from. And I still work workplace, very much so. And I have another element of business that I'm going to start to expand this year, where I'm going to go to my feeder markets. I'm going to go into the offices and meet the managers and meet the agents and take who I am, put it in front of the agents there, and let them also find me for the better match. So I have to do a little less work on my end of, hey, me, look at me over here kind of thing, and find more of who my people are, who are the like people that I need to be in with.
Man, that is so good. And it really loops back to what you said in the very beginning is do more of what's working. That's it. Like just you've stepped back. You're like, all right, these opportunities are really working for me. Let me just do more of that. And I want to essentially summarize, and I wrote it down, is marketing is about being creative and standing out. That's what I wrote based on what you shared. And it's so true. And to go back to my flippant comment about just spamming agents everywhere in the US about your new listing that they will never have a buyer for, that's not creative and it's not standing out. But having a card that looks like the state, that has something intriguing about it, that stands out. That stalls people long enough to go, oh, what is this? Oh, this is cool. Oh, there's a QR code. Oh, let me check that out. That's brilliant. And it's such a good way to approach retreats and spin it, because we're all there overwhelmed. And it's like, okay, well then how do you cut through all of that noise and showcase yourself, and not me, but showcase the client that you're actually compelled and inspired. And for you, just super proud and enthusiastic to work within the subset, which is super cool.
I appreciate that. It's stepping back sometimes, and we have to look at our business and say, I just saw the stat: 29% of the agents, or we'll say the other, 71% of the agents in America did not sell a single home last year. And that'll floor you when you stop and you think about that. But you're still getting contacts, and you're still hearing from people. Or there's people who are saying, hey, I want to do the business. And maybe, they're trying to break in, or they've had last year was a rough year. But are the old school ways of doing things of, hey, here's my listing, here's my just sold, are they appealing to consumers? Or are consumers, the people who we're looking at, if you're farming a neighborhood or if there's other things, are they kind of tired of the noise? And it does become about find something unique and make yourself stick out.
Yeah.
And that's the same for realtors. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot more realtors who've gotten into the business in the last 5 years. And so it's a lot of noise to know who to go to and who to talk to and such. So it then steps back to, okay, well, what value can you pose to that referral partner, and how can you be unique and stand out as to what they do?
And I'll preface this with this next part is I haven't qualified these numbers, so please don't take them as gospel. But the last I heard, and this was a couple of years ago, is there's 2.5 million agents in the U.S. And if you're saying 74% did not do a deal, that's 1.85 million agents did not close a transaction. That is a staggering number.
And so I read that 71%, but even still, we're still talking, a significant number of realtors.
North of 1 million agents did not do any transactions in a year.
Yep. Was it 90% of the realtors do 10% of the business, or however they always break that out? I think that's becoming even a wider gap. I know here in Arizona, they said 95% of the agents, 5% of the agents did 95% of the business here. Yeah. So I'm sure other states have different ratios, but it is pointing to that, one, we're a little heavy on terms of how many people are in our business, and should they be, Or do they need help? Do they need guidance? Do they need mentorship? And
Yes.
how do we focus them? And that's, elements like, some of the coaching aspects and various things that are out there.
Correct.
Those elements can help as well. I personally, I don't coach. I don't hire with a coach. I don't I don't like to spend money. I'm very frugal with that aspect. So I know my motivation. My motivation is I got 2 boys, and I want to provide everything that I can for them and my wife and my family. So I don't need a coach telling me, you need to go do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
And
You sound Gen X is what
Yeah.
that sounds like. You're a latchkey kid.
Yes.
I totally get it.
That's exactly what I was. A latchkey kid who bounced between 2 coasts, from my dad in Arizona and my mom on the East Coast. So everything is just about, it's fear. That's my motivation.
Yeah,
Fear
yeah.
that I'm not going to have this house tomorrow, that kind of thing. But and then it's, finding what you love to do. And when you find the things that you really love to do, I love working with first-time buyers. And I really, really enjoy that experience, talking with them, educating them through it. And that's not going to be a $2 million sale. It's not, but it's worth my time, because those are the people that will always remember you and refer back to you and stuff.
Yeah.
So I love building that aspect. So find your niche and then really dig into it, learn how to market into that, and exploit it, not in a bad way, but exploit that niche so that it benefits you and your clients.
It's interesting. So I'm similar, very similar to you. I personally struggle when I'm working directly with a coach. I'll caveat that with, though, I love to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, hey, how can I learn and do it in a way that's, for me, to your point, that I love, that's enjoyable, that's engaging. And I was like, oh, I want to connect with these agents. I want to build my network, and I want to learn what you're doing. And so why don't I just record it and create a podcast? And so that's what this became. And then as I started to do it, I realized, and it gets reinforced when you share that, north of 1 million agents did not make a deal. That means they can't afford coaching. And then I think about all those baseball players. All those baseball players always had a coach. They always had somebody to help. And so this whole podcast is free coaching. They can sit with you for an hour for free and listen to how you built a business that made and generated 105 closed referrals since 2021. And they can get that free. And then they can go listen to Robert Refkin and hear about how he talks about mindset. Or you can jump in. There's 2 years worth of recordings that anybody can have 100% free coaching and free education. And so I'm the same page. I think when, our businesses change all the time. Be conservative with your money first. Don't overspend, because you'll get yourself into a lot of trouble very, very quick. And then you won't have money for taxes. Then you're in deep trouble. But get education. There's always something to learn. There's always somebody to learn it from. And the beautiful thing with modern society is if you use the social media, the interwebs to your benefit, there's a lot of free education, and this is it. And so that's my pitch.
Yeah, and Shawn, I love what you got with the podcast. And even though you and I recently met and kind of, I was reviewing, listening to some of them, I was like, man, I got homework. I got a lot to go back and listen to, because pure learning and the opportunity to learn from my colleagues is a huge thing. It does boil back a little bit to time. Do you have
always?
This? And I myself am finding I'm more and more overcommitted into other things, including coaching the kids and other things, as I'm sure you see yourself as well. So it's finding the time. A podcast is an ideal way to get the tidbits. And listen, as an actor, we stole all the time. All we're doing is we're observing behavior. We're watching people while we're getting coffee, and I see that person sitting over there, and you're like, oh, that mannerism, or hearing them say something. And so you're taking that nugget, and it goes in there. Rory Galad was talking the other day on the Compass One rollout, and he was talking about the 3-phase marketing plan of a home, of the private exclusive coming soon, and he compared it to a movie and a movie premiere, and how you do a teaser trailer, and then the bigger trailer, and then the premiere, and then it goes nationwide. It's like, what a brilliant way to explain this to your seller, how you want to do this. So again, pick up every little thing that you can by exposing yourself to it when you can, listening to your podcast, listening to other things. And Sky Mike Sky Michaels, who good friend of ours, like Sky is one of the best. And he always had the analogy of it's an apple tree. Just take the apple that works best for you.
That's
If
it.
you sit there and try and get them all, you'll never do it. So
Yeah.
always loved Sky. Brought such great ideas and such to how to do this, use the education aspect in our business. So I applaud you and appreciate you having this podcast as that forum.
And I think, you made a really great point about not having extra time. Like I have a puppy, family, kids, events, travel, work. I have people who work with me. It's all these layers. And so we don't have extra time, but I work out. So I carve out time to work out. And so if I'm in the gym for an hour, I actually have an hour to be in university. And so I listen to audio books, and my hack is I listen to everything at 2x. And if I can just maybe just be inspired or be reminded of something or learn one thing that I can put into my business, it was not only a great workout, but now I got something more to work with. And I think Car University is the most overlooked university there is.
Absolutely.
How many times are agents in their car? Don't listen to music. Listen to music to get inspired, to get pumped right before your listing presentation. But use it as an education tool.
Yep.
And podcasts, I mean, don't listen to just this. Like there's millions of podcasts on business, on mindset, on you name the topic, there's a podcast on it, and you can get a 100% free education from people master of the class. It's I'm sitting here saying that free university has completely changed my perspective. And we're in such a unique time. 100 years ago, you had to do an apprenticeship, and then you would have to go to the library and pick up a book and then study it. It's the number one search on YouTube is how to.
Yep.
For a good reason. And so I hope somebody sits down and they're like, well, how do I build out my referral business? How do I do this thing? And they come across this episode, and they do what I did, and I have a notebook here of things that you said, and I'm jotting them down because there's important nuggets. The peer training it's paramount. That's part of what the inner circle group is, which people have probably heard me talk about at this point to nauseum, is we hang out and we talk about our businesses and we share best practices, and you kind of you pick up little things, and more often than not you're reminded talking to you, I'm reminded, hey, stop taking on those new projects and just do a little bit more of what already works, because it works.
Yep. We steal. You're stealing from each other in a positive manner.
Yeah.
It's I used to be in the office, and I remember when Robert was talking about get back to the office, all this post COVID and such, and I remember when I first started, being in the office was vital for me, being the thief, the actor, watching and hearing the behavior and hearing other agents on the phone and how they're talking to clients and using lines. And Fran Hughes, my manager in Los Angeles, who 40 plus years in the business, she is absolutely a wealth of information. She would be a wonderful person for you to do this podcast on. She would
make the intro. I would love to talk to her.
Absolutely. She would. She always used this line: when you've got that person who doesn't want to spend the $5,000 on the house, to kind of beat the next offer, she would listen. Do you want the deal or do you want the house? And I've used that line thousands of times since, and it boils down, to just a little nugget that got stuck in my brain that you go along and you use them when you need to. That's what pros do in whatever field that they're in. That's part of our 10,000 hours. Spend your 10,000 hours, and part of it is learning in the Car University, as you say. I need a little more gym university of late. So.
Well, hopefully I've inspired you.
You have. Listen. I know it. I've been hearing it, but it's So gym university is going to be my new thing to go on. But
here's my why with that is I have one son who's 18, the other one who's almost 21, and I decided COVID, as I was gaining weight and drinking too much and just not feeling great about myself, I decided that, when we go on hikes and they're getting strong, I'm not going to be the liability. And that phrase, literally, I'm not going to be the liability, was my motivator of,
love that.
I'm going to be there not only for them, with them, but I'm going to be there encouraging them and pushing them and right next to them. And so, now when we go on hikes, it's funny. We went on a hike a few months ago, and me and the young one, Grayson, him and I were like, it was Nolan and his mom, Cielo, and then me and Grayson side by side, so two pairs. And me and Grayson started walking a little bit faster, but not saying anything to each other. And then I would start getting ahead, so he would get ahead. So then I went ahead and he got ahead. And then next thing you know, we're hauling ass as fast as we can, just like running up this hill. And then we got to the top, we looked at each other and we just laughed. And I was like, that's why I go to the gym. Like I want more of those moments with those boys. And so that's been my motivator.
I love that. Yeah, COVID for me, unfortunately, has lasted 5 years. the COVID period of gaining weight and such, and I respect that, having two boys who are 8 and 12. See, I can still beat them, but that day is coming.
Dude, it's close, man. Once the hormones start kicking in, they're like, boom, they just grow, and you're like, oh shoot, I gotta step up.
Yeah.
For me, what really genuinely changed it is, and so I do have an unfair advantage, is I was a personal trainer and I did work in gyms, so I had that was very much part of my life. But I decided, I cleared out half of the garage and I built a gym, and what I wanted to do was grease the slide, take away all my excuses. Is I don't want to have to drive 30 minutes to the gym, 30 minutes back, lose an hour of my life. I want to be able to walk down and immediately go to the gym, and then immediately go to the shower, and then start my day. And so I looked at what's the biggest pain point, what's the excuse, and how do I eradicate it? And that's where I started. And then one of my very dear friends, Clint Van Dyke, he's a professional bodybuilder and trainer. And every once in a while I'll be like, hey man, I need to FaceTime you. How do I do this? What do I do here? Like, why is this not working? This hurts. and so I get, same thing, I get peer training. And so, yeah, I think awesome. It's all about learning. That's all it is.
I've been making excuses. I'm too busy. I got this or that or otherwise. And I should go back to the advice that, what my old football coach back in high school used to say, and pardon the language, but he'd say, excuses are like assholes. Everybody's got one and they're always full of shit. So I need to stop making that and just go and do it. Make it a part of your day. Figure it out. I'm like, find the time, because if you don't find the time now, you'll be paying for it later. So I understand. Yeah. I lost my father this past summer, and his health declined, and that was part of my motivation moving over here and such. But as I watched his health decline, you understand how quickly health can go, and health is wealth. So you got to take care of yourself, and you got to stay on top of it, especially in a business where we're going as much and we deal with as much up and down and stress and other things, and timing wise. So I think that's one of my next focuses. One, I'm building business in a different direction, but two, also, how do I build myself in a different direction and take back some of the things that I was doing previous. Because I can tell you go IMDb me and you'd be like, who is that guy versus this guy? And so, I'm
going to do that. I want to actually see the movies you've been in now. I'm like super curious.
One of my fun things is I was in a Emmy winning episode of television, and I was in a Razzie winning film. So.
All right. I'm gonna look you up. I want to see what you did. Here's one little tip that I have is figure out what you and like in terms of workout. What if you were to do something? What's fun? Like throwing the ball with your kids, or going to the batting cages, and just start doing that. Like if you make it fun in the beginning, you'll want to do more of it. And if you just find whatever that activity is, and then it's just carving out that time to give it to yourself so you can ultimately give it back to your family later is it. I had a coach when I studied martial arts for a number of years who said right before a tournament, he's like, okay, you can have results in one hand or you can have excuses, but you can only have one. Which do you want? And it's one of those like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny even hearing us, and as you're mentioning that, it applies to our real estate business too. Find something that you like doing.
Yeah.
Go after that. Let that be a core aspect of your business. And then you want results in one hand or excuses in the other. So when your business isn't working, stop making the excuses. Find the results. Change your marketing up. Look at some other things. educate. So yeah, all of it's funny when we sit here, we have these conversations. You can strip everything down. The core concepts echo across everything we do. It's
Always.
just about getting rid of all the noise in our life to try to get down to those core concepts, and then stay committed to them. That's the other challenge too, because the commitment level has gotten so difficult these days with how many different directions everything in the world wants to pull you. So trying to just stay focused on the goal at hand.
I completely agree. I think distractions and having the discipline to even recognize when you're being distracted it's tricky. And I think it's really hard, especially for our generation, because we didn't grow up with this. This is a very new iteration, and our brains they're not wired the same as the boys. But one thing, and I'm just like thinking out loud, but one of the things that we did probably 4 or 5 years ago is we just at dinner, we actually all meals, we have a hard rule: no phones at the table. It's like, let's have a conversation. Let's just look at each other and talk. And that's it. Like literally no phones. You cannot pull it out. I've had like crazy deals happening, and I'm like, excuse me, I have to take this. And like, I'll get up and I'll go outside and then come back. And I really genuinely, unless the deal is blowing up, I will not answer it. Yeah. And it's an hour. It's like an hour for me to give to those people. And it's not dissimilar if I had a high net worth client and I was sitting at a listing presentation. There is no way, absolutely zero way, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to give all my attention to that person until that meeting is over.
Yeah. And that's, my wife she is fantastic in trying to constantly remind me of that. She's like, you wouldn't do that in business. Why do you do that with us? Kind of question. It's like, you're right. I got to focus on that. So it's a constant reminder for ourselves, because dinner time is when our clients are available, and that's when they want to talk. And so that's a challenge for us to say, I can't talk right now. Sorry. And put them away for an hour. But you got to give that hour back to the people who are your biggest fans and who support you as well, too. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough balance. It absolutely is.
It's a balance. And I think at the end of it, it's life as our business is a practice, and it's not a perfect, it's a practice. We're practicing to be better the next time. And it's like, acknowledge the slip ups or acknowledge the missteps and just move to the thing that's better and work more on that. And I think part of that's life and maturity and kind of having had all of those different just experiences.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great concept. They always call it acting a craft. If you're creating, that's a big portion of any business. You're constantly just trying to create what works for you and then put it in practice as it were. And one of the big things that one of my acting coaches we always talk about is that, okay, you've done all the work. Let it go. Just let it go. Go in there and just do your thing. So it's same with the listing presentation. You've reviewed all the comps, you've sat, you've looked at everything, you know it all. You've got it. So when you go in there, hey, at that point in time, just let it go. Just be present in that moment. And you find you're so much more able to connect with the person and have a successful listing presentation than if you're trying to remember every script that was given to you by every coach and go through this and do all that. You come across as robotic, and it doesn't work.
100% agree. Without a doubt, because if I've done all that work up front and I've deeply internalized it, I can now focus on them. I can watch their body language. I can listen to the nuance of how they said something about that part of the house that they just absolutely love. And now I have to honor that for them. But if I'm just worried about, what script am I going to use here? I'll miss that little cue that they gave me when I said something and they tipped their head. And I'm like, oh, okay, that connected. Let me go a little bit further and ask more about that thing. And it goes back to just being present. And if you're worried about your phone or who you need to call back, or you're worried about what you're going to say, you lose it. You'll blow up that whole sale, that whole relationship, the rapport, everything will be all for naught.
Absolutely. 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Pat, dude, this was really fun. I'm looking at
Absolutely.
the time now, and I'm always like, oh shoot, we're actually a little over, which is always to me it's a great sign. So
Yeah,
thank you. I
I
appreciate your time,
agree.
man.
Yeah, as you and I talk more and more, I can understand similarities of our backgrounds and why we gravitated towards each other, for this. And so I look forward to more opportunities of us talking and such. And I hope people who are watching us and have our conversation get something from it, because honestly, I just felt like you and I are talking. So it's nice if somebody heard us and picks up something. So.
Somebody will. We get definitely the newsletter for this podcast goes out to thousands of agents, and then of course people find it organically. And at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer of a rising tide lifts all ships. And so if we can just lift one of those agents to make that connection with that one client, and they make that deal and they move away from being in that 71%, I think it was all of this was a job well done.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I love that.
Well, thanks, man. That is a wrap.